So my salary is going to be $200,000, and then there's, but I am currently in debt, $287,000. So my question is, do I stick to the public service loan forgiveness that I'm currently on because I'll be at a VA hospital, or do I end up just paying it off in, 3 to 5 years aggressively?
There's no sign that you're going to lose your job. That's a scarcity mindset that like out of nowhere you're going to lose your job, but you have absolutely no evidence that you have any reason to lose your job. So we're just going to go based on what you know today, which is you have a job and you're making good money.
So I watched the whole thing. A doctor calls in hundreds of thousands of dollars deep in medical school debt and asks the only question that matters, where do I even start? And the advice they got wasn't wrong. It was just the same advice you'd give anyone with a car payment and a credit card. But a physician's debt doesn't behave like anyone else's, and neither does a physician's income. So I did something the segment didn't have time to do. I actually ran the math on the advice, and the math has a very specific answer. Let's start where the caller did, because this is where the whole thing gets decided. The interest never waits for you to be ready. You borrow somewhere around $62,000 a year for 4 years, so call it $250,000 in principal, except it never actually sits still at $250,000. At roughly 8%, compounding while you're still sitting in lectures, it quietly grows, so that you don't owe $250,000 on graduation day, you owe $281,000. And then residency arrives, which is the part the cheerful advice always skips right over. 4 years, about $67,000 a year, 80-hour weeks. And here's where it gets real, because that number has to actually cover a life. If you're single, sure, maybe you can stack roommates into your 30s and live on rice and call it discipline, but you've still got rent in a city you didn't choose, a car that has to start at 5 in the morning for a call shift, malpractice and licensing and board exam fees that nobody warns you about, and a body that needs to eat something other than vending machine coffee if it's going to keep running on no sleep. And if you're not single, if there's a partner, maybe a kid, maybe a mortgage you took on because you're a grown adult in your 30s, now that same $67,000 is stretched across 2 lives or 3, daycare alone can run you more than your loan payment, and suddenly, aggressively attacking the debt isn't a discipline problem. It's a math problem you literally cannot solve yet. So against that balance, your entire paycheck barely touches the interest. You are working harder than almost anyone in the country, and the loan is still going up. Which means on the day you finally become an attending, the day this was all supposed to turn around, the debt hasn't shrunk at all. It's grown to around $360,000. That caller isn't behind because they were careless. They're behind because the math was always going to do this to them. So when Ramsey says cut hard and attack the debt on that one narrow point, he's right. But here's where his answer and the real answer start to split apart. Picture 2 people, both 30, standing at the exact same fork. One of them stays put in a steady, sensible job, earning about $75,000 a year, and the other closes their eyes and walks straight into medicine. And for 9 long years, honestly, it is not close. It's not even in the same area code. Because while the one who left is sitting in classrooms earning nothing and then grinding through residency earning almost nothing, the one who stayed is just quietly living, getting raises, putting money away, and by the end of those 9 years, they've banked nearly $700,000. $700,000 ahead. And if you stop the tape right there, Ramsey doesn't just sound right, he sounds obviously right, because the doctor looks like they made the single worst financial decision of their life. But then something happens that no 60-second phone call has time to show you. Quietly, at age 39, about a year into finally being an attending on a strong specialty income, the 2 lines cross. 9 years of sacrifice, and the math finally catches up and pulls ahead. Except, and this is the part I need you to really sit with, notice exactly what that depended on. It depended on a high income. Take that income and move it down, the way it genuinely moves for a pediatrician or a family doctor earning less than half of what an anesthesiologist makes. And that crossing point doesn't just shift a little, it slides years further down the road. So this is the exact spot where the simple advice quietly breaks. It treats the debt like it's the whole story, when really the income and the timeline were the story the entire time. But here's the part I genuinely wish that caller could have sat with for a minute, because once you understand the timeline, there's a hopeful half to this story that the phone call never got to. Because those same 2 lines that took 9 brutal years to cross, once they cross, they don't just gently gently drift apart. They tear away from each other, except now it's the doctor pulling ahead. Here's how fast it turns. Start paying aggressively once you're in attending. Throw around $80,000 a year at it, and even that monstrous $360,000 balance, the one that nearly broke you, is gone by your early 40s. And the moment it's gone, the entire income is finally fully yours, with a clear 20 years left for it to compound. So watch where everyone actually lands. By 65, on these assumptions, the one who played it safe and stayed retires genuinely comfortable, around $3.5 million earned across a lifetime, close to $1.7 million of it invested and working for them, nothing to apologize for. The physician crosses $9 million in lifetime earnings, with more than $5 million invested. And that's the thing, even carrying the debt longer, even white-knuckling through those early years that felt like a mistake, the curve still quietly bends in their favor in the end. Which is why Ramsey's fear isn't unfounded, it's just incomplete. The dream does pay. It pays really well. The only honest question was never whether it pays, it's how long it's willing to make you wait for it. So after all of it, did the math say no? Here's my honest answer, the whole one. The one that was never going to fit inside a 60-second phone call. To the debt itself, the math says yes, absolutely, attack it, go scorched earth, and on that one point, Ramsey is completely right. But to the bigger question, the real one underneath the call, was becoming a doctor actually worth it? The math doesn't say no at all. It says something quieter and harder than no. It says wait, because look closely at when this thing actually pays. The break even doesn't come until 39, and later than that if your specialty pays less. The real wealth, the kind that makes people say it was obviously worth it, doesn't show up until your 50s and your 60s. But the price, the years with no income, the 80-hour weeks, the bone-deep exhaustion, none of that waits for your 50s. All of it gets charged to your 30s, which happens to be the exact decade your kids are small, the decade you don't get a second copy of. So to the doctor who actually called in, scared and underwater and wondering if they'd ruined their life, here's what I'd want them to hear. You are not drowning because you made a mistake. You are standing in the single hardest stretch of a plan that genuinely mathematically works, on a timeline that nobody had the decency to warn you about. The debt is real, the payoff is real, and the decade it quietly asks you to spend to get there, that's real too. So don't look away from the numbers, ever. But don't let anyone, not even Dave Ramsey, hand you a simple answer to a question this big. Go in with your eyes wide open. See you in the next case.